When you franchise your business, when you become a franchisor, your FDD, in addition to forming the legal foundation of your franchise, it's also the blueprint of your franchise offering. Look, the FDD is a legal document, but the process, as we work together, as we develop your FDD, there are critical metrics, data, and information we're going to be evaluating that are going to form the underpinnings of your franchise offering. In the end, your FDD, it's what brokers are going to evaluate. It's what franchisee candidates are going to evaluate. And the process that we work through together, well, hopefully, it's going to be translated into what becomes your franchise offering, what's displayed on your website, the uniques your franchise offers, what your competitive advantages are, your compelling why now, why someone today should buy your franchise over others. Winning strategies for franchising your business. Strategy number 3, competitively positioning your FDD. And so how do we competitively position your FDD? Well, we're going to focus on mindset, best practices, brand positioning, unit economics, your technology and supply chain, financial performance representations, and some growth tools or legal tools that should be part of your franchise agreement. When we speak with successful franchisees, when we have conversations about their journey in becoming a franchisee, in selecting a particular franchise, and ask them why they went with one franchisor over another, what was compelling for them, time and again, things they reflect on, what they talk about is ROI, estimated startup expense relative to income potential, unit level economics, the fact that the franchisor has systems and technologies that work, and the franchisor's management team. Ultimately, franchisees want to know about what the brand is today, what the future will look like, and that there's a system where that flywheel could get spinning and they could grow the business and build, hopefully, family wealth. And histories of successful franchisees and generational wealth, well, that's one of the high points of franchising. And so now, as you become a franchisor, as you go through the franchising process, let's have that mindset and focus on all these items. So competitively positioning your franchise offering, we're going to start with mindset. As we develop your FDD, as you become a franchisor, mindset-wise, it's critical to know that not every FDD is created equal. An FDD is not just some check-the-box document, a necessary evil, something you need to have to become a franchisor. It's not something that's an afterthought to the franchising process. And so many startup franchisors get this wrong. It's because they're working with a franchise development company that treats the FDD and the franchising process as an end goal and just as a pro forma process. And what happens is you get form without substance. You get form without legal protection. So your FDD is critical. It's critical to your legal protection, and it's critical that it properly reflects your brand, and it's critical that as we go through the FDD development process, things that are disclosed in your FDD, whether it's royalties, territory structures, needs to reflect a thought process that's being applied not only in the FDD, but how you're positioning your franchise offering. So you need to have this mindset and understand the importance of the FDD, the fact that the process of creating the FDD, how we work together with our clients on it, that process is as important as the end result, and you need to competitively position, right? So that's mindset. Best practices, well, that's doing what works, and doing what works for you, a startup franchisor, an emerging franchisor. Emerging franchisors have challenges that larger established franchise systems don't have. So just copying what larger brands or older brands do is not a pathway for success. So what does best practices involve? It involves producing an FDD that not only legally protects you, but is competitively positioned against your competitors. You have better metrics, and tells a compelling story that's built around your business, not only your industry, not only your business, but how your business operates, how you service territories, or how you operate from a retail location, or how you operate a restaurant, your Item 19 financial performance representations. These are all critical. They're part of the best practices. as we work with our clients, sure, we're competitively positioning and benchmarking. Well, what does the competition look like in the industry? Also, what does competition look like outside the industry, but at the same price point? Meaning, when you sell franchises, say you're a restaurant, your competitors are not just other restaurants, they're other franchise offerings at that same investment level, right? Sometimes a franchisee candidate thinks they want to buy a restaurant, but they come across a compelling service based business and there's the same initial investment or one's lower. So you need to benchmark not against only against competition, but we need to benchmark based on your estimated initial investment. Because when franchise brokers show candidates different opportunities, they may be showing not only different brands in the same industry, but they may be showing different industries. So benchmarking against competition, benchmarking against other price point initial investment franchises, best practices in terms of you as a startup franchisor. What it's going to take to succeed as a startup franchisor is very different than more established brands. And then from a best practices standpoint, it's critical to know that just doing what everyone else does is probably the wrong thing. 90% of the FDDs out there are just afterthoughts. They're not competitively positioned. And the sad thing is startup franchisors don't learn about the mistakes or the opportunity they missed out on until years later. So focus on best practices. Brand positioning. So brand positioning, economic positioning, these all become part of developing a competitive FDD. How does this come into play? Well, there's limitations as to what we can and can't disclose in an FDD. Again, it's a franchise disclosure document. It's regulated by federal law. It's regulated by state laws. We have to follow a particular format. But as we're developing the FDD, it's so critical for me and our team when we're working with our clients to focus on what is the brand positioning and what is economic positioning. And let's start with brand positioning. No matter your industry, what are those attributes of your brand, right? And that involves an analysis of the services you provide, the products you're selling, your supply chain, what your unit level economics shows. And we'll talk about that more in your industry. So as we go through the FDD development process, one of the questions I have for our clients is, if you were in an elevator and there were two franchise brokers there and they asked you what you do or what your franchise is all about, can you answer that question in one sentence? And that's not an easy thing to do for any business owner, myself included, right? And if you're a gym and you answer, well, I'm a gym, or we sell gym franchises, you've lost that conversation. Because again, when you're selling franchises, not about you being a gym or a service-based business or a restaurant, it's what's that unique attribute about your business that's going to compel franchisees to want to join your team. And as we develop the FDD, these are the questions and things we focus on in terms of your brand positioning, in terms of your products and services, your industry, your unit level economics. That's important for me as we develop the FDD, and that's going to be important for you as you start reflecting on how does your brand positioning get translated into your FDD and into your media. For example, your franchise sales website. What's the compelling why you, why now in your website? What's the founder story you're going to be communicating? How does your founder story line up with the territories you're offering franchisees, the initial franchise fees you're charging, the ongoing royalties? What's the unit economic story? What's the founder story? What's your brand positioning? And while it may not all be reflected in the FDD, process is important, and it's important for you as you develop your franchise offering. Economic positioning. Well, this comes down to key metrics: initial franchise fees, royalties, local marketing, brand development fund, and some other unit level metrics. Why are these important? Well, because they're sort of the outer shell of your franchise offering. Everyone cares about what's your initial franchise fee for a couple of reasons. Well, number one, you want to be competitive to within your industry. Number two, if you're working with franchise brokers earn a commission based on a percentage of your initial franchise fee. That's the outer shell. The inner shell to what your initial franchise fee is, and as we're developing it, we're recommending specific fees structures for our clients based on competition, industry, creating a competitive advantage, but also evaluating the unit economics of your business. So, for example, if you're a service-based business, what are the territory size we're granting? Are we offering multiple multi-unit territory opportunities? And how do we price them? What's the initial franchise fee for one territory? Are there discounts for multiple territories? What's the initial franchise fee for a restaurant? What does a fee structure look like for multi-unit development opportunities? So there's advantages here. You need to follow best practices. So economic positioning, that's your initial franchise fee. The second biggest is your ongoing royalties. Now, your royalties are the lifeblood of your franchise system. As a franchisor, your goal, your long-term value is to build up satisfied franchisees that are performing, that are doing well, and that are paying you ongoing royalties, whether weekly or monthly. Those royalties become your cash flow. It's how your franchise company is valued long-term. Royalty structures are important as we work on the positioning of your franchise brand. Typical royalty structures are just percentage of gross sales, but there's opportunities depending on your industry, depending on your business. For example, if you're a restaurant or you're a retail-based business, do we have a fixed fee royalty that goes down as your gross sales go up during a calendar year and sort of rewards a franchisee for higher levels of performance? If you're a service-based brand, do we have a percentage-based royalty? Do we have a fixed dollar amount royalty? Or do we have a hybrid, meaning franchisee pays the greater of, say, 6% of gross sales or blank dollars per month? Franchising is about win-win relationships. So we don't necessarily recommend royalty structures to punish franchisees or to make you more money. It's balance, right? And so, for example, say we are a service-based business and we offer multiple opportunities, meaning I could buy 3 territories. That's great. I'm excited. I buy 3 territories. Well, it's going to take me time to build them up. What if in year 2, my life changes, circumstances change, I'm not as motivated, I don't service territories 2 and 3? Well, if my royalty is just a percentage of my sales and my sales are nothing in territories 2 and 3, there's no harm to me. But to you as a franchisor, you have underperforming territories, and that's not good for the system. If we have a minimum royalty structure, meaning, hey, Charles, for territory 2 and 3, even though you're not selling, that's your choice, you have to pay us a fixed dollar amount. Well, that does 2 things. One, it creates an incentive to me to start servicing it, or if I'm not going to come back to you and say, hey, I want to give back these territories. Again, so it's about performing territories, satisfied franchisees, growing your franchise system. So part of that economic positioning, it's how we're going to set up your royalties. Next is local marketing, which I think is the biggest missed opportunity for startup franchisors. If franchisees complain or they don't do well, their biggest complaint is they didn't generate enough business, enough customers, or they blame the franchisor for not helping their phone ring. Usually, even if it's the fault of the franchisee, the problem can always be traced back to, or usually is traced back to, the fact that the franchisee is not investing enough in local marketing. They're not spending enough weekly, monthly, pay-per-click ads or social media ads. And then it has a snowball effect. They're not getting the business in. They have less income. They're less inclined to invest in any marketing. And then it spirals out of control. Most FDDs have just a generic provision that says franchisee has to spend, hypothetically, I'll say 2% of monthly gross sales on local marketing. But that doesn't make any sense, right? Because if someone's in the startup phase of their business and the monthly gross sales are low or 0, 2% of 0 is nothing, that doesn't make sense. And also, why would the standard be the same during year 1 versus year 5 when that flywheel's going? So I think, part of the economic positioning, we work with our clients to evaluate what marketing makes their business successful, how we can introduce a pre-opening marketing spend that maybe is paid to you as the franchisor or has to be paid to a particular vendor to get that marketing flywheel started, and also fixed dollar amount minimums that need to be spent at least during the first 12-month period where marketing is so critical. And then over time, as sales grow in your FDD structure, in your legal agreements, we put a self-regulating mechanism in that says, look, here's your local marketing spend. Say it's the greater of 2% of your monthly gross sales or X dollars. And maybe that X dollars goes up if you have more territories or whatnot. And as your sales go up, a franchisee may say, look, my sales hit a critical level. I could cut down on spending now, and that may be right. So we could introduce those mechanisms into your FDD, your franchise agreement. That all gets to the economic positioning. That's also going to help with franchise sales. So initially, someone would say, your franchise is more money than your competitor because you take X dollars in upfront money for local marketing. But if you're having a conversation with a franchisee candidate, what you're demonstrating is that you're genuine and you're concerned about their business and that you have a program in place for their marketing to get their phone to ring. Local marketing is always critical. We also have brand development funds and things we talk about and we position for our clients. But that's the economic positioning, initial franchise fee, royalties, local marketing, brand development fund. There's a ton more, but those are the core elements as we talk about competitively positioning your franchise brand. And even back to local marketing requirements, imagine on your website differentiating from your competitors, showing what your initial marketing program looks like, or without revealing too much, the process involved, why you charge upfront fees, and how you do marketing for your franchisees. They care about that. Competitively positioning, well, technology and supply chain. When we speak with franchise brokers, what comes up time and again when we ask, what do they look for in a franchisor when they recommend their candidates? Things they bring up is technology advantages and supply chain. Brokers and franchisee candidates want to know about technology. They want to know about all the things that are going to make their lives easier after they open up the business as a franchisee. They want to know whether it's point of sale systems, customer relationship management systems, apps to provide estimates or take photographs or give quotes, right? Supply chain that's going to create some advantages for the franchisees, give them an advantage in the marketplace, in selling to customers, profit margins. Those things matter. As a franchisor, your primary revenue streams, your initial franchise fees, your ongoing royalties. The third is revenue from your supply chain, rebates you're going to receive. And if you create a win-win relationship, it's completely fair for you to receive rebates from suppliers, right? And within the FDD, we need to make certain disclosures for that. And we need to talk about that as we plan. You know, chances are in year one, you're not going to have much rebate revenue, but in time you will. And it's important to plan in your FDD. And it's important to competitively position how this is all structured. Next is financial performance representations. So item 19 of the FDD is where franchisors include financial information about their performance. Now, the biggest advantage or the most important tool that a startup and emerging franchisor should be taking advantage of is item 19 of the FDD. As a basic, item 19 is where a franchisor can disclose financial performance representations. The rule in franchising, right? So you're franchising your business. That means you're operating your business. I'll call it your company-owned outlet. You have a track record. You know what your gross sales are. You know what your profit margins are. You know what your revenue per customer may be, and other economic data. The rule under the franchise laws, as a franchisor, you cannot share that information. In fact, you can't answer questions like how much do you make? What are your gross sales? How much can a franchisee make? You can't answer any of that information unless it's disclosed in item 19 of your FDD, and that's called a financial performance representation. For so many startup franchisors, when I look at their item 19s and even established franchisors, item 19 represents the biggest missed opportunity I could ever see. And that's usually a function of a couple of things. One is because the lawyer or franchise developer that prepared it just treated it as an afterthought or doesn't really understand how to develop a best practices item 19. And it's the biggest missed opportunity. So when we're dealing with item 19, data, we want to be disclosing about your company-owned outlet, your business. Well, think about it. What data would we want to disclose in item 19? Well, we want to disclose data that'll help answer the typical questions that we would expect franchisees to ask us. Now, they're going to ask us how much can they make? And the answer is I can't answer that. But what I can tell you is what I make. I could tell you what the gross sales of my business is. I could tell you what maybe my cost of goods sold is, my percentage of cost of goods sold relative to my gross sales, what my gross profit is. Maybe I could even show operating expenses, cash flow, and EBITDA, or revenue per customer, revenue per transaction, repeat customers, percentage of customers we convert from contact. There's no limit to the types of data we could disclose in item 19, as long as it's representative of the franchise we're offering, and as long as it's prepared properly. People are too lazy when it comes to item 19. And I see so many problems. An example being where I'll see brands come to us years later, successfully grown service-based businesses, but their item 19s don't reflect their economic activity. Why? Well, because chances are, if you're a service-based brand, you're probably operating in a territory that's much larger than the territory you're going to sell your franchisees. So for example, say you operate in, I'll just say hypothetically, a territory with 1 million people. Well, as we go through the franchise development process, we may say that the right territory size for a franchisee is 250,000 people. How do we then disclose your item 19 data? Well, we create what we call a multi-territory offering. We would be disclosing that effectively you're operating in 4 territories. We offer franchisees the ability to buy multiple territories. We develop your item 19 around single and multi-territory opportunities. So there's definitely ways to refine your data. And even if you're a restaurant or a retail or service-based, but just understand that competitively positioning your FDD, the biggest factor is going to be your item 19. It should not be an afterthought. It should be unique. It should be clearly defined. It should be detailed with data. I see so many item 19s that are just wrong or a waste of time. And one of the first things a broker is going to evaluate, a franchisee is going to evaluate, one of the first conversations you're going to have with your franchisee candidates is going to be about item 19. Why? Going back to what we discussed earlier, they want to get an idea of what's the potential ROI on the investment they're about to make in your franchise system, and what does life look like for them down the line, and possibly planning for multi-territories or multi-unit development agreements. So item 19s are critical. Growth and legal tools, it almost didn't even make this list, but what I find is this is something that's going to be important for you 3 years from now. It's overlooked during the development process. As we're developing your FDD, naturally we're developing your franchise agreement. And within your franchise agreement, we're going to be exhibiting all the working legal agreements you're going to be using with franchisees, like lease addendums, where a landlord has to acknowledge your rights as a franchisor and maybe give us step-in rights, digital media assignments and social media account assignments, where franchisees acknowledge that you own all the digital media. And if by some chance they control a social media account, that you have the right to contact the service provider and gain control and prevent rogue franchisees with their social media policies, the ability to sell multiple territories, the ability to sell multi-unit development agreements. So those are legal tools. And just know, as you're going through the franchising process, that's something we're focused on. That's something you should have in the back of your head, which is, how do I make all this work as a franchisor and as I'm managing relationships with my franchisees? So competitively positioning your FDD, keep 2 things in mind, right? There are limits into what can be discussed in your FDD, but the process as we develop the FDD is so critical. So for example, the brand positioning, the economic positioning, understanding supply chain, these are all things we're going to be talking about as we develop your FDD. One of the questions I have for our clients when we have our initial discovery call is if they were in an elevator with some franchise brokers and they could answer in 1 sentence and the broker asked them, what's your franchise about? How would they answer that, right? And if you're a restaurant or if you're a gym and your answer is, well, I'm a gym and we provide training, well, you lost that conversation, because you need to do a deeper dive, which is get to the essence of your brand. And while we're preparing the FDD, legally, it's important for me to understand those brand attributes, the economic attributes, your item 19, because in one way or another, they're going to be embedded and reflected in the FDD. And when I say competitively positioning, that's what I'm talking about, right? Embedding the essence of your franchise, your brand in the FDD. But what I'm also talking about is that process. The process is just as important as the product, which is, as we have those conversations, talk about brand positioning, talk about unit economics, talk about local marketing, talk about initial franchise fees, talk about royalties, talk about the future for a call center, have all these conversations. These are things you should be focusing on and evaluating. How do they get translated into your website? How do they get translated into value proposition, the why you, why now? The conversation with a franchise broker or franchisee candidate, the broker presentations, the candidate presentations, why your territories are more competitive than others, why your unit level economics have advantages that others don't, what's going on with the supply chain, your brand positioning, the uniques you offer as a franchisor. All of this lives on, and in the DNA, the nucleus, it starts taking hold in your FDD, and it's where good things happen. So competitively positioning your FDD is critical. If you have any questions, always feel free to reach out to me, to our team. We also have some great resources for you. If you're on Facebook, go to Franchise Growth Mastermind. It's our Facebook community. There's over 1,000 franchisors, franchisees, brokers, professionals there. And we've also created our FranX Accelerator. If you go to franxlaunch.com, you could claim a free profile, access some free masterclasses, go to our website at franchiselawsolutions.com, and get started with positioning your FDD and your franchise offering.